something I just found sticking out of the ground. Going back to people dumping random rubbish on their land. What do you think that is? Stick something in the comments if you think you know what that is, and I'll let you know if you're right. I don't know if, hopefully you can see it, otherwise this is all mute, but yeah, it's like, really? Try and let you get a better view of it. It's kind of obvious, but there you go, that's the shape that'll give it away. What do you think that is? Better still, any ideas what they might have thought was going to actually happen to that if they just dumped it in the ground? That's how it lives, like that. That's how you'd use it. Oh dear, what were they thinking? So we're finally, the weather's turned to our favour. It's been wet for quite a while now, since I took all this, or shifted all these offcuts from the timber that was down the bottom there. But it's dry today, but it's going to rain later, so for me that's perfect because the ground's wet, but also the rain will stop any problems later if the fire gets out of control. It's a bit near the house, but it's probably the best place to do it. So yeah, the ground's nice and wet, so this grass isn't going to catch light. I've got the hose pipe out just in case. I won't go into any detail, but it's a lesson learned, let's say that, shall we? From when we were first here. It was a bit of an exciting afternoon, so we won't be doing that again. But today, I've got to clear out this burn pile. There's all sorts of ancient rubbish in there now. I want to sift out the rubbish stuff and hopefully bring it down a bit. There's a lot of soil in there from where I had some stumps that had caked soil in them. So we'll get rid of this lot. Right, let's do this thing. She's smoking. Right. Let's feed this bad boy. So much here, it's like, where'd you start? At the moment, it's whatever I can get hold of. Get that thing going. Oh, stay there. I want you that way. Got the hose pipe on standby just in case, you never know, but hopefully this will burn nice and contained and fairly quickly. It's the last day at school today, my little, and I'd like to go and pick him up, but I can't leave this unattended because that would just be silly, wouldn't it? Some logs around here. I think we might need to let that. We'll let that do its thing for a bit, and then hopefully it'll spread out a bit, and I'll be able to start piling stuff on once it gets a good base. Like I mean, trying to tell you how to set a fire. Once it gets a good base, you know what I mean. It's away. So we'll come back to that in a minute. I'll give it 10 minutes. It's starting to take hold now, so that's good. That'll leave it a bit to calm down because sometimes you get a bit carried away and there's not like a decent base to it. You can chuck a load of stuff on and it puts it out even though it's roaring, which is kind of disappointing, but she's chucking up some heat now, you won't be standing next to it. But it's kind of hard to get hold of this stuff. Probably not the right bucket for it, but hopefully clearing all this up when this is gone. Let's get a big old lump on there. Once that starts going, I should be able to just throw stuff on there and with reckless abandon. We'll get some of these big logs on there as well, really. Start them cooking, because they seem to take a while to get going. Let's get a couple of them up there. No, I knew you was going to do that, you dirty basket. Smoking face, that's not good. Right, I'll let that stew for a bit. We'll go over here and I'll get some of that conifer type rubbish on there, because that's always good for a laugh. It likes to go a bit quicker. Not going to hang about. Turbo. Great way of doing this, because you can get loads on at a time, but the thought does cross my mind sometimes. What would happen if it broke down? There, for instance, because there's no way you're going to stop them hoses full of warm hydraulic oil under pressure. If I created some sort of immense fireball there. This stuff's fairly green. It was stuff that was been pushed over in the wind or something like that. But the needles go, as you can do them crackling away. They go a lot good. But this stuff might take a bit of going, so it might be a bit premature chucking all this on here. And that one there yesterday, you had to take that down coming home from school. It was bending over across the drive. You see it's kind of snapped. So that's as green as you like, that thing. But when that gets going, I'll drag that over there and that should go up all right. If not, we'll have to deal with it another day, but I just don't like having too many poles all over the place. I want to kind of keep the digger over there, near to where the action is, just in case it decides to get a mind of its own and play by its own rules. I'll pole this up. Come on. Good. No. Okay, come on, give it a wheel. There we go. Let's get them on there, and at least that way they can start getting heated up. Drag this out of the way. There. Find sometimes you can pile it up and then push it over, which obviously if you were doing it by hand you can't do that bit. Yeah, it's kicked off now, isn't it? Ah, look at that. And then I'll just drag on and get this one out of the way. I want this one to go up on my terms rather than there's a bit left around here. Right. Get out of the way. Sit back and admire our handiwork for 5 minutes. I mean, I'm 10 foot away and that's hot. Smoke gets in your eyes. Right, we'll leave it like that for a bit. I'm going to let that burn right down and then I can start really going for it, chucking some stuff on. I don't want it to get too big, but I want to have it a lot of heat there so that I can get through this stuff quickly, but not have it so big that if it gets kind of starts misbehaving I can't deal with it. The first course of action is to get in there and rake it out, take some of the wind out of its sails. But yeah, that's cool, that's hot now, I can feel that. Let's leave it 10 minutes and we'll get back. I'll move this digger out of the way because I don't want to leave it here. Right, let's take a look, shall we? Seems to be going alright. Got a bit exciting there for a while, the heat was ridiculous. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and feed it so that it's low and long, if you know what I mean. It just feels a little bit safer to do it that way. Not that big log on it. Let's try and clear this guy out. Struggling to pick this up. It might have been my route. It might have been a better idea. I can persevere for a bit. Let's see. It might be alright. Alright, I'm going to try and bring this fire this way a little bit. Spin around this way. Cool, feel that heat. Well, I know you can't, but I definitely can. Let's get this thing out of the way. Oh, there she goes. I mean, the best will in the world, you'd never be able to pick that up, roll it into this. You might be able to get it somewhere nearby rolling it, but you'd never lift it up and dump it on the top like this, for instance. He says dropping it. There we go, that's better. Got a better grip of it now. The trouble is I don't want to hang around the bucket over them flames too much. I'll scoop all this up. Okay. There. Yeah. Oh, that was handy. I'm not an expert, you may have gathered. I get by, but I can guarantee you that, well, I already have. I'll be out here at some point with a pair of gloves, just chucking it in. Some of these little bits, it's just not worth trying to faff around and use a digger for it, when you can just pick it up and throw it in like that, you know. It's kind of a bit of a waste of fuel. So let's pop that on over there. Start on this pile. What I'll probably do is get as much as I can up and then try and scrape them into a bit of a bigger pile. See me changing this bucket before long. Drop right down that. We went forward that way, boy. Right. Let's reposition. I think we'll shove that lot over, thinking about it. Shove this lot over and get a bit nearer. I want a bit of a slope here as well, which doesn't help. Loading sideways is never a good idea, as I've just nearly demonstrated. Yeah, that, I don't know if you can make that out, but the ground's bleh. And we sunk a little bit there when I had that right out. There's quite a lot of weight on it. You don't kind of realise how much weight's hanging out. What is that, 10 foot, 12 foot out? And you have to be on a little bit of a slope, with a little bit of soft ground as we were there. I mean, it wouldn't have gone over, it would have just bucket would have hit the ground, but it definitely lets you know you're alive though. I think what I'm going to do is, when that was getting hot, that lot there was a bit close, so I'll make my way over there and grab them, I think. Turn this bad boy around. It's going to be wet and sticky. A lot of clay here. Oh, it's all squelching. When it's dry it's fine, but when it's wet you have to clean the tracks out and so yeah, job. Hopefully that's enough to get me in. Get him out of the way. Dump some of this. Be a bit more manly with it. See, tracks are spinning, that's how slippy that stuff is. Right, well, let's grab some of this. Get rid. Put that blade down and way off of it. It says leaving the bucket over the fire. Concentrate. Turn the revs down a bit. Sometimes slowing it down can be a bit more predictable. These Kubotas are great workhorses. Contractors love them, hire companies love them because they're kind of robust. But from what I've researched about them or seen about other people say about them, is they're a bit clunky. They say if you want a nice, accurate, smooth machine, Takuchi apparently are quite good. The theory goes is that a Takuchi will make a reasonable operator or a standard operator look good, and a good operator look amazing, because they're a bit more, I think the controls are a little bit more finer, you can get a bit more accurate with it. However, you pay for that, because they're not cheap, them things. But this does me. It's a lot easier picking this lot up with this clunky digger. Can't get out of the way. I'll just get up high. There we go. Yeah, it's a lot easier using this allegedly clunky machine. Than it is getting out there with your hands when you're digging a hole using a shovel. You've got any sort of size trench to dig. Oh, having a digger makes life so much easier. Like heavy stuff like that, you know. Logs are a pain to pick up because you have to try and get them round to your way of thinking. My thumb being it's a little bit too, I think it's too far high up the stick, and that affects the way it can grab. It's my fault. Trying to save a few quid, I've got a thumb that's for a slightly smaller machine. Because I was on the borderline, this is something like a 2.8 tonne I think. And I could have gone for the next size up. And I sometimes wonder if that would have been a great idea. It might have been better, because I can't quite. No. And it's not so bad on this bucket, but when you get like a normal digging bucket, for instance, they're a bit bigger. Especially like you get like a 2-footer on it, and the teeth are nowhere near, so you can't like nip stuff up. Especially when you're close, because you need the digger to be able to do that. You know, have it stretched out, so as soon as something gets nearby you have to either move the machine or kind of roll it out of the way. But the other thing is I can't bring that stick all the way in now. I don't know if you can make it out, but on that top pivot there's some wear marks. It's where them brackets, they actually hit the boom. But it was their first one, and I mean the welding's great. Wish I could weld like that, the way they put it on. It's just a little bit too high up. I think if it had been a bit lower down it would have been better, especially with normal buckets. But look at this sticky mess. I'm hoping to be able to move around this way and go over fresh ground and then that way and out when I'm done. There's too much backwards and forwards in here, it's going to be there. I'll have to leave the digger out and let it dry and chisel it off that way. But right, this is kind of rinse and repeat really. Every sort of half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, I'll let it flare up, burn down a bit, and then when it gets a bit lower I'll put some more on, feed it. And we're getting to the big logs as well, so they're going to take a lot longer to settle. There's still a lot of planks here, but at the end it's kind of these big logs. I want to get them on first really, because they take a lot longer to get rid of. But yeah, there we go, that's what we're doing so far. I'll let that sit for a bit and then I'll bring you back. Right, I've let it sit for about half an hour, maybe a bit less. So now, rinse and repeat. We'll load it up with a bit more. If I can, I want to try and get a bit of a path, get out of the way, through here, but I don't know if this is going to work or not. Right, let's get some on the fire. That's not working. File. This thumb just kind of stops me from doing that, grab hold of it properly. But we've got something there. Get it forward. Oh, that's not grabbing this from the back, I think. Yep. Put the blade down. Alright, drop you there. And just grab it wherever we can. Get too technical about this. Shove it on. Oh, that's a big one. Heavy. Close to it here, and it's quite hot. I don't want to be too long because I've got rubber tracks and I like to keep them. That's alright. And drop it over the back if you can. There we go, watched it. It's flattening down quite nicely now. Grab it, it's slipping around. Come on. There we go. That's better. Oh, them two are heavy. Feel it kind of start battling the machine around. Just considering this thing weighs best part of 3 tonnes. It's not big by most standards, but it'll come off alright. That down, I'm wiggling about too much. A bit more. There we go. Right. I'll reach this. Just out of my reach, but you rat bag. ideal weld, better grab that, just launch it over there. Kind of like that. This big one here. It's not a big one, but it'll do. Make a hasty retreat in a minute. It's a bit more here. Alright, that works alright. Kind of using the thumb to wiggle myself round. Bit of smoke with that. Can't get some of this. Use the thumb to push it forward. Use the bucket to grab it. Kind of maybe overthinking this a bit. I'm trying not to dig up too much soil. Because I don't want to put mud on the fire. I'm trying to keep it going, obviously. Again, it's like when you're working around trees, you've got to be careful. This lot don't cling up and take your hydraulic hoses with it. Although it's ropey old stuff now, it can still do some damage. Bit of a twist on. Right, we can come back. So what we do, we'll lift that up and we'll lift that thumb. See? Come on. My thumb's operated with my foot, so when you're using this thing, it's kind of like patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time. If I had a button on the joysticks or control sticks, whatever you want to call them, the controls, I think it might be a little bit easier, but however, I'd sooner struggle with the thumb controls than not have a thumb. Right, we'll do one more and then I'm going to get out of here. I'm a little bit too close. I want to grab that one, but see if I can get it. I don't know why I want to grab that one, but I kind of do. No. Let's get over the back of it. Do. Right. Retreat. Get out of here. Then get the thumb out of the way, and I'll try and push this all back. Stick the blade down, stops it from rattling around so much. If I can push this back so that I stand a chance of getting hold of it. Rightly or wrongly, I always have my engine speed quite low. Sometimes it struggles a bit, but I find it's a little bit more, what's the word, predictable, I suppose. If you've got the revs up, you see some people they get all out of hand, out of control, where they're trying to do something a bit fine, and you give it too much in one direction, and it all goes a bit long. But the downside is sometimes to do like a stroke, it takes a while. But for me, I think it's at my level of skill, it just gives me a little bit more time to think about what's actually happening. Get off. There we go. built up. Let's get the thumb out of the way, have a quick look. I can tell you, or I can report, that is hot. I feel it on my face. So let's get this thing out of the way. So I think leaving it parked too close. Good ending tears. And then basically going to be more the same. I'll bring you back a bit later when there's maybe more to see. But I'll let that burn down. I'll tidy this up a bit. I will get out and throw a few of the odd sticks that I know I'm not going to pick up the digger. And then we'll go from there. You might not be able to hear that's roaring. And you can also hear there's a log that's probably got some moisture in it. Sounds like a kettle going. I doubt if that mic's going to pick that up. But anyway, let's let that die down a bit and I'll see you in a bit. I'm trying out a new, what should we say, bracket for the microphone on this little action camera that I'm using in here. Because I've got an external mic on it, because the internal one's probably the other side of the camera from where I'm sat. So I've got an external one, but there's nowhere to clip it. It's a USB one, and there's actually nowhere to clip it on the machine. So I've made a little fancy bracket. I'll try and put a picture up of it here. Twisted bit of wire, bent round and clipped the mic to it. Not particularly complicated, but it seems to be working. But I won't know until I start editing this how well it panned out. Because I did notice on the last one I did, there was a lot of clicking, and what it was the microphone came unclipped and was actually rattling around and hitting I think it was hitting the glass, or it was hitting something, and that's where it would come from. So anyway, DIY bracket, there you go. I'll sell them on eBay for 100 quid. That's that. But yeah, let this fire go down. Try and get them big ones on it. I don't want to leave it till right to the end, otherwise they won't go anywhere. They'll just smoulder for days. I'll get rid of them. Try and get them on there. Well, we've still got a fair bit to get shot of. I want to keep over away from that if I can. Oh no, drove over it. It's a big one. Ah, you goon. I let go too early. Don't want to be working here. Not that close. That's it, drop that one on there. That's it, look at that. Biggest two. Oh, well, I'll just bounce that one off. And try and lift that up, get it back in the middle. I think there's one under here somewhere. Some of these ones were kind of buried and they're quite wet, so use that heat to my advantage. Yeah, if I push it out a bit, I should be able to grab it. There. Again with this one here. Out of the way, and then on my grab that big one and try and drag it back up if I can. Right, let's see if we can get near it. It's already on fire. I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping. That log that fell off not so long ago, I'm going to push it back on out of the way. I'm going sideways because I don't want to be sat too close to this. I'll be in and out as quickly as I can. Push it up there. That's it. Perfect. Just shifted that one because it's spreading out a bit. I want to try and keep that fire long and thin if I can, so at least if I have to sort of get in there and snub it out quick. Snub it out, is that a word? I figure it's easier if it's long and thin rather than a great big massive towering inferno. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit wider, keep it a bit more contained, which is going, and that's what we're dealing with at the minute, and that's what's left of the pile. So I'd say we've got less than a quarter left. It's not bad going. Not been at this that long, all things considered. So I'll let that go down. I'll let that go down a little bit further, and then I'll load it up again. I've had a bit of a brainwave. Well, not a brainwave. Something I've been toying with doing for a while now, but I never get round to it. This is probably why. I'm going to turn this round. See if I can't use it a bit like a shovel, you know what I mean? I've no idea if this bucket will actually fit this way, so I've never done it before, so it's new and exciting. He says it's maybe why I've never done it before. Let's try pushing it out a bit. Digging in. Guessing I'll probably have to really angle it. Oh, there we go. Now thinking it might be easier to break the coals up, use it like a fork. We're not on properly. Kind of over to one side, I don't know if that's better. There we go. So I've never done that before, and I've never used it this way around before. It might be so bizarre that I can't quite get my head around it, but let's have a go. I'm thinking I might be able to sort of get underneath stuff. And lift it up. Like this. Yeah, it kind of works, doesn't it? Look at that. This is weird. I think you found my new favourite toy. Because if I can scoop this lot out and rake out these coals and stuff, these logs stand a better chance of burning down. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, let's move it around. I'm going to shift it over there a little bit. Right, a little bit further forward, and let's see what this does with this. It's kind of like a skid steer action. Hopefully I'm not raking all that dust over it. Dust, coals, you know what I mean. And putting it out. It's definitely slowed down an awful lot. But I'd like to get all of this gone. And not just end up with a pile of coals. So I'm thinking I'll get in here and make these out. Get out of the way. Too much. Right, let's go around the other side for that one, I think. Yeah, I'll go over there and do the same again. I like this though. I'm glad I did that, because nothing else. It's a bit calculated, rather not learn it on a raging fire, but however, it might come useful in the future with something else, grading something perhaps. Maybe if you can't get in and scoop the bucket that way, you could turn it around and go pick it up. Well's your oyster. At some point though, you just have to leave it alone and kind of let it do its thing. Because the lower that burns down, the easier it's going to be. I'm not going to be trying to lift it up so high. So maybe let's exercise a bit of patience, shall we? Let's see if I can't come back to this later on. But however, the bucket's good to go. I bet that's the first thing my little one sees when he gets back from school. Why have you got a new bucket? That's what he'll say. He spots things like that. Right, that looks weird.
I feel amazing, being on this highlight every single day, and man, it's like a highlight. This is what I pay, feel excited because I know I'm going to places. Everything I want is coming to me. Getting DMs asking how much for a feature. Tell them if it's right.